Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're here to take you inside the stories and ideas that shape our world, breaking down complex history into something you can really grasp.
And today, we're looking at a moment where survival itself seemed like, well, a defiance of geometry. A story about command under the most intense pressure imaginable.
We're diving deep into the Pacific War, specifically into a battle that hinges on one captain's radical, maybe even crazy idea that saved his ship when everything said it should have sunk.
It all comes down to a specific time and place.
Yeah.
You have to picture this.
Yeah.
It's May 1945. The war in Europe, over. Germany surrendered.
So back home, people are thinking, okay, the end is near. Relief, celebrations.
Exactly. A sense that maybe, just maybe, the worst is over. But for the American sailors sailing towards Japan, especially around Okinawa, it was the complete opposite. They were heading into a storm of violence, a level of suicidal desperation that was, frankly, unknown before.
And right at the sharp end of that spear was something called radar picket duty. This was, well, it sounds strategic, but it was brutal.
Oh, absolutely brutal. The Navy called it their canary in a coal mine. The idea was to station these destroyers, these small, fast ships, about 50 to 70 miles out from the main fleet, ahead of the carriers and troop transports.
Oh, why so far out?
Radar. They had powerful new radar sets. Position them out there, and they could detect the big Japanese air raids coming off Kyushu, the southern island of Japan, hopefully giving the main fleet enough warning to get fighters up.
So they were like tripwires, sacrificial tripwires, it sounds like.
That's exactly what they became, because by putting them out there, isolated, they became the first targets the Japanese pilots saw. And these weren't ordinary pilots anymore. These were kamikazes.
Suicide attackers. Their mission wasn't to fight. It was just to crash into the first American ship they saw.
Precisely. So these picket destroyers, these advanced warning stations, became the focal point of the attacks. They were bristling with guns, sure, but they had thin hulls, no armor to speak of, and absolutely no backup nearby, floating targets.
And the danger, it wasn't just perceived danger, was it? The numbers are horrific.
Horrific doesn't even begin to cover it. This specific duty, radar picket duty around Okinawa, became, statistically, the single most dangerous naval assignment in U.S. history, period.
Wow. Okay, give us the numbers.
Between March and June 1945, basically the Okinawa campaign timeframe, 206 U.S. ships served on these picket stations. Out of those 206, 15 were sunk outright. Gone.
15 sunk.
And another 45 were damaged so badly they were knocked out of the war. Put that together. Sunk or severely damaged. That's 60 ships out of 206.
That's nearly 30% casualties for the ships themselves.
Almost 30%. Now compare that to the overall U.S. Navy casualty rate for ships in the entire Pacific War. That was around 3%.
3% versus 30%.
Yes. So when the sailors called it suicide duty or the coffin corner, they weren't exaggerating. They were stating a statistical fact.
And we're going right into the heart of that. We're focusing on one specific spot, Radar Picket Station 10, northwest of Okinawa, nicknamed appropriately the Coffin Corner.
The absolute bullseye.
And our ship is the USS Aaron Ward, a Sumner-class destroyer, pretty new, commissioned just back in October 1944. She's got the guns, the speed, everything a modern destroyer should have.
A formidable ship, on paper, 2,300 tons, 6 main 5-inch guns, lots of 40mm Bofors cannons, dozens of 20mm guns, designed to put up a wall of anti-aircraft fire.
But the date is May 3rd, 1945, and on that evening, the Aaron Ward is about to face the ultimate test. The question we're tackling today is, how did this one ship survive 4 direct kamikaze hits in just 10 minutes, when other ships, built exactly the same, hit fewer times right next to her, sank?
And the answer isn't luck. Not entirely. It's not the steel. It's not the guns, really. It comes down to the captain. A young guy with a very controversial, almost heretical theory about how to fight kamikazes. A theory his own superiors thought was reckless, maybe even insubordinate.
All right, let's get into this captain, Captain Sanders, because his whole approach seems to fly in the face of everything the Navy taught. So Captain William Henry Sanders, Jr., tell us about him. He was young for a command like this, wasn't he?
He was. Only 34 in 1945.
Yeah.
Graduated from the Naval Academy back in 1933. Now, think about that timeline. His entire early career, his formative years as an officer, were spent in the peacetime Navy.
Which means, what kind of Navy was that?
It was a Navy obsessed with procedure. Strict formations, perfect station keeping, doing everything by the book. Spit and polish, precise maneuvers and fleet exercises. That was the path to promotion. Initiative was, well, not always rewarded, especially ship handling initiative. Fire control was king.
And those procedures, those 1930s rules, they probably didn't have a chapter on what to do when someone's intentionally trying to fly an airplane loaded with explosives straight into your bridge, did they?
Not exactly. And that's where Sanders started to diverge. People recognized he was smart, very competent, but his fitness reports, even early on, mentioned this troubling pattern of aggressive independence. That's a direct quote.
Uh-oh. That sounds like code for doesn't always follow orders.
Pretty much. He became obsessed with high-speed maneuvering, even during training exercises off Hawaii before they deployed. He practiced these radical turns, pushed the engines to flank speed unexpectedly, constantly drilling his crew on evasion.
And how did his superiors react to that? I can't imagine the ship next to him in formation appreciated it much.
They hated it. His action reports are fascinating. One commander wrote his maneuvers were unnecessarily dramatic, said his wake disturbed nearby ships, messed up the perfect formation. Another senior officer was even harsher, writing that Sanders displayed, quote, tactical creativity that borders on insubordination.
Wow. Insubordination. That's a career killer in the Navy, especially then, suggesting the official doctrine might be wrong.
It was incredibly risky. And you have to understand why the official doctrine was what it was. The Navy's anti-kamikaze plan wasn't stupid. It was based on logical principles.
There were.
Maximize your anti-aircraft firepower. Concentrate your guns. To do that effectively, especially with the main 5-inch guns that needed stable directors and radar tracking, you needed stability. So the idea was, turn your ship into a stationary gun platform.
Hold steady, point the guns, and just fill the sky with lead. Hope you hit them before they hit you.
Exactly. More stability equals more accurate fire equals dead kamikaze. That was the theory. Simple, direct.
But Sanders didn't buy it.
Not at all. He looked at the reality of the situation, especially the pilots they were facing by 1945. He argued that a stationary, predictable target was the perfect scenario for an inexperienced suicide pilot.
Wait, why inexperienced? Weren't these hardened Japanese pilots?
Not by 45. The aces, the really skilled pilots from Midway and Pearl Harbor, they were mostly gone. These kamikaze pilots were often, well, the sources called them the replacements for the replacements. Young guys, maybe 50 hours of total flight time in their lives.
50 hours. That's barely enough to learn takeoffs and landings.
They often skipped the landing training. Their job was simple. Get airborne, fly towards the American fleet, pick a ship, and crash into it. Straight and level, ideally. So Sanders figured if you give them a nice, stable, non-moving target, they're going to hit it.
Okay, so his radical idea was, don't be stable.
Precisely. Use their lack of skill against them. Keep the ship moving, constantly changing speed and direction, especially at the last second. Introduce complexity, introduce unpredictability, and the inexperienced pilot, under immense pressure, wouldn't be able to cope.
It's like trying to hit a fly that's buzzing around erratically versus one sitting still on the wall.
That's a great analogy, and Sanders backed it up with calculations. He wasn't just guessing. This gets into the real science of it.
Okay, break down the math. The geometry of evasion, as the outline calls it.
Right. So a typical Japanese fighter, like the Zero, used in kamikaze attacks, travels fast. About 280 knots, which is roughly 470 feet per second.
470 feet. That's like 1.5 football fields every second.
Exactly. Now, when a kamikaze pilot commits to his final attack run, say from a mile or so out, aiming for your ship, he has maybe 10, 12 seconds max before impact. That's his window to make final corrections.
10 seconds? That's not a lot of time at that speed.
It's nothing. So Sanders calculated, what if the Aaron Ward is moving at flank speed? For a Sumner-class destroyer, that's about 34 knots, which is really hauling.
34 knots, okay.
If, in those last 10 seconds, he orders a hard, full rudder turn, the stern of the ship, the back end, can physically swing sideways through an arc of maybe 300 feet.
300 feet in 10 seconds. It sounds like a lot, but is it enough to make a difference to a plane coming in that fast?
That's the key. From the pilot's perspective, looking down, focusing intently on his aim point, maybe the bridge, maybe the smokestack, that 300-foot sideways swing, doesn't just look like a small shift. It looks like the whole ship just jumped sideways. The target isn't where his brain expects it to be.
It creates an optical illusion almost, a mismatch between perception and reality.
Exactly. Analysts later called it cognitive dissonance. The pilot's brain is locked onto where the target was a split second ago. Add to that human reaction time, even a good pilot needs, say, half a second, maybe 3/4 of a second, to recognize the turn, process it, and physically move the controls.
And in that half second?
At 470 feet per second, the plane travels another 180 feet or more. By the time the pilot reacts, the geometry is completely changed. He's too close, too fast, he can't make the fine adjustment needed, he'll either miss entirely or, and this is crucial, he'll hit at a glancing oblique angle, not the solid perpendicular hit he needs to do maximum damage.
Okay, the theory sounds brilliant. Risky, but brilliant. But how did the crew feel about practicing this constantly?
Oh, they hated it. Sanders was relentless. He ran these high-speed, full-rudder turn drills constantly, often completely unannounced. Day, night, didn't matter. Suddenly the commands would come, all ahead flank, right full rudder.
I can imagine sailors getting thrown around.
Absolutely. The old Navy saying one hand for yourself, one hand for the ship became literal survival advice on the Aaron Ward. Guys learned to always have a handhold, just to avoid being flung across the skeel deck or even overboard.
And the poor engineers down below.
Think about it. The engine room crew, they're dealing with high-pressure steam turbines, boilers pushed to the max, suddenly going from cruising speed to flank speed, then maybe back down to flank speed again, hard turns. It puts incredible stress on the machinery. Constant throttle changes, vibration. It was an engineering nightmare. Flank speed is meant for emergencies, not hourly practice.
Did anyone, try to talk to him, tell him to maybe ease up a bit?
His executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Carl Neert, did. He reportedly went to Sanders and said, essentially, Captain, the men are exhausted. This constant stress, the lack of sleep, the wear on the engines, it's impacting morale.
And Sanders' response?
Apparently, it was incredibly blunt. He told Neert something like, I'd rather have a tired crew than a dead one. We drill until this is muscle memory. Because when the real attack comes, there won't be time to think. They need to react instantly, almost without thinking.
He was drilling the instinct for survival into them, not just the procedure.
That's exactly it. He knew rational thought would vanish in the face of a screaming kamikaze. He needed reflexes honed by endless repetition. He was betting everything on his theory, and he needed his crew to be able to execute it flawlessly, even if they were half asleep or terrified.
So let's set the scene for the day itself, May 3rd, 1945. Before the chaos, what was life like out there on Radar Picket Station 10?
Mind-numbing monotony, punctuated by sheer terror. That was picket duty.
Yeah.
The Aaron Ward was steaming in this big, lazy oval pattern, maybe 10, 15 miles across.
Yeah.
Just back and forth, back and forth.
In the Pacific heat.
Relentless heat. Steel decks you could fry an egg on, literally. Constant sweating. And the food, well, standard destroyer fare. Powdered eggs for breakfast, Spam for lunch, maybe some kind of stew for dinner, lots of coffee, probably watered down. It was grueling, boring work.
But underneath the boredom, there must have been this constant tension, right? Especially in the CIC.
Oh, absolutely. The Combat Information Center, the CIC. That was the nerve center. Darkened room, guys hunched over the radar scopes, watching that green line sweep around, every little blip, every piece of sea clutter, every unidentified echo. Your stomach tightens. Could this be the one? Is this the raid starting?
Because the Japanese had gotten smarter about how they approached, hadn't they?
They had. They learned that high-altitude attacks were getting shot down too easily by radar-directed guns. So they started coming in low, really low, skimming the wave tops, they called it.
Which makes them harder for radar to pick up.
Much harder. Radar signals bounce off waves, creating clutter near the surface. So these low flyers could sometimes get within 10, maybe 15 miles before they were clearly identified as hostile aircraft.
And at 470 feet per second, that doesn't give you much time.
Maybe 90 seconds from positive ID to weapons release or impact. 90 seconds to get all guns tracking for the captain to decide on his maneuver. It's an incredibly compressed timeline.
While the Aaron Ward is doing its lonely patrol, what's happening on the other side? 200 miles north.
On Kyushu, the southernmost main island of Japan, the airfields are buzzing. The Japanese 5th Air Fleet is gearing up for what they called Operation Kikusui No. 5.
Kikusue, floating chrysanthemum. Sounds poetic, but it was deadly serious.
Utterly deadly. Yeah. This wasn't just a routine raid. Kikusui No. 5 was one of the largest coordinated mass kamikaze attacks of the entire Okinawa campaign. They were throwing everything they had left into this one.
How many planes are we talking about?
The total number mobilized was around 125 aircraft. A mix of fighters, dive bombers, even some trainers packed with explosives. Of those, maybe 90 or so were dedicated kamikaze planes, their pilots expecting to die.
90 suicide attackers heading for the fleet, and the picket line is the first thing they'll see.
Exactly. And remember what we said about the pilots. This really drives home Sanders' point about exploiting their lack of skill.
Right, the replacements for the replacements.
Literally. These weren't experienced combat veterans. Many had, like we said, maybe 50 hours total flight time, barely enough to keep the plane level, navigate roughly towards Okinawa, and point the nose down.
Their training didn't even include advanced flying.
No time, no resources, no need. The curriculum was stripped bare. Take off, fly towards the target coordinates, pick a ship, crash into it. Things like evasive maneuvers, dogfighting, even landing. Completely eliminated. They weren't expected to come back. Sanders was preparing to dodge motivated, but technically unskilled, human-guided missiles.
So back on the Aaron Ward, did they know this massive attack was coming?
They got a warning. Around 1400 hours, 2 in the afternoon, a message comes through. Increased Japanese air activity detected launching from Kyushu. Standard warning.
But they didn't know the scale.
No. That was the agony of it. Was this just another small harassment raid, maybe 10 or 20 planes trying to pick off a stray ship? Or was this the big one, the Kikusui attack with 50, 100, maybe even more planes? You just didn't know. All you can do is prepare.
And wait. The waiting must have been excruciating.
Unbelievably tense. Then, around 1500 hours, 4 in the afternoon, a welcome sight. The Combat Air Patrol, the CAP, arrived. Usually Marine Corsairs, Navy Hellcats, fast, powerful fighters.
Friendly planes overhead, that must have eased the tension a bit.
A little. They'd weave these protective patterns overhead, but everyone on that destroyer, from Captain Sanders down to the youngest seaman, could do the math. There were maybe 12 CAP fighters assigned to cover all the picket stations in that sector.
12 fighters against potentially 90 kamikazes.
Right. Even if the CAP pilots were absolute miracle workers, even if they shot down 70-80% of the attackers, some were inevitably going to leak through, enough to overwhelm the destroyers below. It was just grim arithmetic.
So what did Sanders do as the afternoon wore on?
He made sure the ship was ready to react instantly, all boilers online, giving him the ability to go to flank speed immediately. He put the gun crews at Condition 2.
Condition 2, what does that mean exactly?
Condition 1 is full general quarters, everyone at their battle station. But you can't maintain that for hours on end. People get exhausted. Condition 2 is a state of heightened readiness. Half the guns are fully manned, ready to fire instantly. The other half of the crew is nearby, maybe resting, but able to get to their stations in under 2 minutes.
So conserving energy, but ready to spring into action, ready for his high-speed maneuvers.
Precisely. He had the mechanical readiness for flank speed, and the crew was alert, poised. The ship was coiled like a spring, just waiting for those radar screens to light up with something terrifying. The calm before the inevitable storm.
Okay, the clock starts now. Evening, May 3rd, 18.1 FAME hours, 6:15 p.m.
The call comes from CIC, the one everyone dreads. The radar operator's voice, probably tight with adrenaline. Multiple bogies bearing 320, range 40 miles, closing fast.
40 miles. How much time does that give them?
At the speeds involved. Maybe 7-8 minutes before the first planes could possibly be overhead, the general quarters alarm blares through the ship, klaxons, bells. Everyone scrambles to Condition 1, full battle stations.
And the radio must have exploded with chatter from the CIP fighters.
Instantly, you'd hear the clicks, the static, the tense voices of the pilots. Hatchet leader, the flight commander, comes on. Tally-ho, visual on multiple bandits, estimate 50+, various altitudes, engaging now.
50+, so this is the big one. Kikusui number 5.
This is it. Miles away, maybe 10, 15 miles out, you start seeing the dogfights, little puffs of smoke in the sky, tracer fire. But then the report you don't want to hear. 18.22 hours, a pilot calls out, 3 bogies breaking through low, heading 280.
Low on the water, heading right for their station. They slip the net.
They slip through. And they're heading straight for picket station 10. Sanders doesn't hesitate. This is the moment his entire theory, all that practice comes into play. His first command, all ahead flank speed, steady on course 180.
He wants maximum speed before they even see the planes. Build momentum.
Exactly. The ship surges forward, engines whining, pushing up to that 34-knot maximum. He's setting the stage for the evasion.
18.24. 2 minutes later.
Look out, scream. Aircraft! Low on the water, bearing! They spot 6 planes coming right at them. The Aaron Ward erupts.
All guns firing.
Everything. The main 5-inch guns boom, aiming for near misses to throw up huge splashes of water, trying to distract or damage the planes. The 40mm Bofors cannons start their rhythmic thump, 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 streams of tracers reaching out. The 20mm guns add to the wall of lead. It's just a volcano of defensive fire.
Do they hit anything?
Yes. The lead plane, a Zero, disintegrates about 2,000 yards out. Just vanishes in a ball of fire and debris. Huge cheer from the crew. But the second plane, a Valdive bomber, keeps coming. It pulls up slightly, then noses over into a steep dive, aiming right for the bridge.
This is the first real test of Sanders' theory.
This is it. The Val is committed. Sanders watches it, waits. He needs to time the turn perfectly. Too early, the pilot adjusts. Too late. Well, too late is too late. He waits until the plane is screaming down maybe just 2 seconds from impact. Then he bellows the command into the voice tube. Right full rudder, all ahead flank.
And the ship reacts.
Instantly and violently. At 34 knots, hitting full rudder, the ship heels over hard. The deck's tilting maybe 20, 30 degrees. Men are clinging on. From the Val pilot's perspective, looking down that bomb site, the entire 2,300-ton destroyer just skids sideways out from under him.
He can't adjust in time.
He tries. You can imagine him yanking the stick, trying to follow the sliding target. But he's too low, too fast, committed to the dive angle. He misses the stern, the fantail, by maybe 30 feet. 30 feet. Plunges into the ocean right next to the ship on the starboard side.
Wow. Close call.
Incredibly close. The explosion underwater sends a massive shockwave that slams into the hull like a giant hammer. The whole ship shudders, but it's intact. The turn worked. The theory worked. First blood saved.
Does Sanders have time to celebrate?
No time. He immediately orders rudder amidships. Straighten her out. Get ready for the next one, because it's coming. Just 3 minutes later, 18.27. Another plane, this time a Zero, is boring in low from the starboard quarter, the right rear.
Did this pilot see the first one miss? Maybe learn something?
Possibly. He's coming in even lower, hugging the waves, trying to make the targeting harder, give Sanders less warning. He's adjusting his angle slightly as he comes in.
Sanders, move!
Instant counter. Lift full rudder. Hard turn the other way.
Trying to jink back and forth.
Exactly. Keep him guessing. The Zero pilot now has to predict which way the wildly maneuvering target will go. He guesses wrong. Sanders turned left. The pilot seems to have anticipated a turn right, or maybe just couldn't correct fast enough for the left turn.
What happens?
The Zero flashes past the bow of the ship, so close, the gunners on the forward 5-inch mount said they could clearly see the pilot's face, even the traditional Hachimaki headband he was wearing.
That close. Terrifying.
The pilot realizes he's missed, tries to pull up sharply, probably overcorrects in panic. At that speed, low altitude, the stress is too much. The wings just fold upwards, ripped off the fuselage. The plane cartwheels violently into the ocean about 500 yards ahead of the ship.
2 attacks, 2 misses. Sanders' crazy turns are working.
They are, but the situation is about to get infinitely worse. It's 18.28. The remaining 4 attackers don't come in one by one. They coordinate. They split into 2 pairs, attacking simultaneously from opposite sides. 1 pair from port, 1 pair from starboard.
Oh no, that's the nightmare scenario, isn't it? You can't turn away from both.
It's the geometric trap. If you turn hard right to evade the starboard attackers, you present a perfect broadside target to the port attackers. If you turn left, vice versa. There's no perfect move.
Sanders has to choose. Which way does he turn?
He has seconds. He shouts, "Right full rudder." He chooses to turn towards the port side threat, maybe hoping to present a sharper angle to them, make their hit less effective. But in doing so, he exposes his starboard side.
And the starboard attackers are right there.
Impact number 1. A Judy dive bomber coming in from the starboard side slams into the ship just below the bridge wing. Because of that last-second turn Sanders initiated, it's not a perfect perpendicular hit, maybe a 40-degree angle, but it's still devastating.
What does it hit exactly? What's the damage?
The engine, the heaviest part of the plane, punches through the thin hull plating right into the pilot house area. Aviation fuel erupts. Instant inferno. 3 men on the bridge wing, a signalman, a quartermaster, a junior officer, killed instantly. Sanders himself is just inside the pilot house. The blast throws him backwards violently. He hits the bulkhead, suffers a severe concussion, temporary deafness from the roar.
Is he out of action?
For a second, maybe. But pure adrenaline, pure training kicks in. He's deafened, bleeding for the concussion. The bridge is filling with smoke and flames. But he pulls himself up. The communication systems, voice tubes, phones, they're probably wrecked. He sees the ship starting to slow. He stumbles to the engine order, telegraph the big brass handles, and slams them back down to flank speed ahead. Keep moving. That's the instinct.
Unbelievable. But there's still another plane coming from that side, right?
Yes. 30 seconds later, 18.3. The second attacker from the starboard group, the Zero, sees the wounded smoking destroyer. It's an easier target now. It dives. Sanders, still deaf, probably shouting hoarsely, maybe using hand signals, gets the command through. Left full rudder. Another violent turn, even amidst the chaos.
Does the turn work again?
Partially. Impact number 2. The Zero hits the aft deck house, further back on the ship. Again, because of the turn, it's a shallow, oblique angle. The impact is hard, but the plane starts to break apart.
What happens to it?
The engine separates completely from the fuselage. This massive, red-hot chunk of metal, weighing almost a ton, just tumbles across the main deck like a demonic bowling ball, as one survivor described it.
A bowling ball.
Yeah, just bouncing and skidding. It smashes right through the protective splinter shield of a 40mm Bofors gun mount amidships. The 4 men inside that gun tub killed instantly. The engine then hits another bulkhead, bounces again, and finally careens over the side into the sea.
Horrifying. And fires.
Yes. Aviation fuel from the Zero ignites. Secondary fires start erupting in the crew living spaces, the berthing compartments, directly below that aft deck house. The ship is now hit twice, heavily damaged, fires raging fore and aft, significant casualties.
But still moving, still fighting.
Still moving at flank speed, guns that can still bear, still firing. 2 catastrophic hits in 2 minutes, maybe 40% of the anti-aircraft battery is knocked out.
Yeah.
But they are still alive. Sanders' turns, even when they didn't prevent a hit, seem to have lessened the severity, turning kill shots into glancing blows.
Is that the end of the attack?
One more plane. It's 18.35 now. The last attacker, another Val dive bomber, has been circling. Maybe the pilot was hesitant, maybe waiting for a clear shot, maybe just unnerved by the sheer amount of flak the Aaron Ward was still putting up despite the damage.
What does Sanders do for this last one?
His final maneuver command. Right, standard rudder. Not full rudder this time, maybe because the ship is damaged, maybe trying a slightly less violent turn, just standard. Maybe 15, 20 degrees of rudder.
Does it work?
Something works. Just as the Val starts its dive, it's hit squarely by a 5-inch shell from one of the main guns. The shell blows the entire tail section clean off the airplane.
A direct hit, so it's over.
Not quite. The Val is now out of control, just a dead weight falling out of the sky. But it still has all that forward momentum from its dive. It's uncontrollable, but it keeps coming. It slams into the port side of the ship, just forward of that already damaged aft deck house.
Impact number 3 from an aircraft, the 4th hit overall if you count the engine.
Right. And this third aircraft impact is critical. The explosion rips open more hull plating, but crucially, it ruptures fuel tanks deep inside the ship and ignites ready ammunition stored nearby for the guns. Massive secondary explosions follow.
And the steering. You mentioned geometry earlier.
This is where it fails. This final impact, combined with the cumulative damage, splits hull plates near the stern below the waterline. It floods the steering gear room instantly. Worse, it severs the hydraulic lines that control the rudder.
Uses steering while doing flank speed.
Exactly. Complete loss of steering control. The rudder jams hard over, stuck at 15 degrees right. The Aaron Ward, still doing 34 knots, begins to carve an uncontrollable high-speed circle in the water. 4 kamikaze hits in 10 minutes. The ship is still afloat, but burning fiercely, and now she's a sitting duck, trapped in a predictable circle of death. The fight changes instantly. It's no longer about dodging planes, it's about saving the ship. And the absolute first priority, that rudder, circling uncontrollably at high speed. Any surviving Japanese planes or a submarine could pick them off easily.
Sanders knows this. He's on the bridge, which is a wreck. How does he even communicate?
Communications are gone. Voice tubes melted, phone lines cut. It's back to basics. He needs to get a message to Damage Control Central, deep in the heart of the ship, likely below the main deck, somewhat protected. He grabs the nearest guy who looks able to run. Turns out it's a 17-year-old kid, Seaman Robert Martinez.
Just the teenager.
Yeah. Sanders basically yells at him over the roar of the fires and the wind. Get to damage control, tell them steering is jammed. We need manual control, NRW, go.
And Martinez has to run through, what? A burning, damaged ship.
Exactly. Smoke-filled passageways, maybe tilted decks, debris everywhere, lights probably out. Claustrophobic, terrifying, but he makes it. He gets the message through to Damage Control Central.
So what happens then? Can they fix it from Damage Control Central?
Now, the problem is further aft, in the steering gear room itself. Damage Control relays the message, likely via sound-powered phone if those lines are still intact, or maybe another runner, back to the compartment where the actual rudder machinery is.
Well, what's it like back there?
It's hell. Gunner's mate Harold Peterson and his small team, maybe 3 other guys, are in the after steering compartment. It's down low, near the stern. The last blast sprung hull plates. Water's already ankle deep, maybe knee deep, and rising. It's dark, maybe only emergency battle lanterns working. The noise is deafening.
And they have to manually take control of the rudder. How do you even do that on a 2,300-ton ship doing 34 knots?
Brute force and mechanics. They have to physically disengage the damaged hydraulic system and engage the manual gear. This involves closing valves, shifting heavy levers, maybe even using chain hoists. Then they have to literally crank massive wheels or pump levers to physically move the huge rudder against the force of the water rushing past at flank speed.
That sounds exhausting. Impossible, almost.
It's incredibly demanding physical labor. They're probably getting instructions shouted down from someone connected to the bridge via a working comm line, or maybe just trying to center the rudder based on feel. They're fighting the ship's momentum, the water pressure, all while standing in rising oily seawater in a flooding compartment.
How long does it take them? Every second counts.
8 minutes. 8 critical minutes they wrestled with the controls. Finally, they managed to overpower the jammed hydraulics, shift the rudder back towards amidships, and stabilize the Aaron Ward back onto a relatively straight course 180.
8 minutes of being a helpless circling target. But they did it. They saved the ship from that immediate threat.
Peterson and his team were absolute heroes. Unsung heroes, working in the dark in the water, saving everyone topside.
Okay, steering is back, sort of. What about the fires? Especially that huge one in the aft deck house from the second hit?
That fire was vicious. Aviation gasoline burns incredibly hot, much hotter than a normal shipboard fire. We're talking temperatures easily exceeding 800 degrees Fahrenheit inside that metal box of the deck house.
How do you fight something like that?
With great difficulty. The damage control parties are trying to get hoses on it, but the heat is so intense the water they spray often just flashes into superheated steam. Steam burns are horrific, and it wasn't really suppressing the core of the fire, which was fueled by pooled gasoline.
So standard firefighting isn't working.
It's not. And this is where another critical damage control decision happens. Chief Bosun's mate, Frank Sarnke, is leading one of the hose teams. He sees they're making no headway on the main fire, just getting scalded by steam. He makes a tough call.
What does he do?
He basically says, stop fighting the main fire directly. We can't beat it right now. Instead, he orders his team to flood the compartment next door to the burning deck house.
Flood an undamaged compartment. Why?
To create a fire break. The idea is if you flood the adjacent space, the water cools the steel bulkhead, the wall, between the two compartments. It prevents that bulkhead from getting red hot and collapsing, which would allow the 800-degree fire to spread further into the ship.
So sacrifice one compartment to save the rest of the stern?
Exactly. It's tactical thinking under extreme pressure. Stop the fire from spreading by creating a cold boundary. It was effective. It contained the inferno, preventing it from reaching ammunition magazines or other critical areas deeper in the ship. Save the structural integrity of the stern.
Incredible initiative. Meanwhile, what about the wounded? You mentioned casualties.
The human cost was mounting rapidly. The ship's sickbay, normally a small space maybe designed to handle half a dozen minor injuries, was completely overwhelmed.
Who was in charge there?
The ship's doctor, Lieutenant Thomas Wen, and just 2 pharmacist mates. That's it, 3 guys. And they suddenly have. The reports say 40 injured men crammed into this tiny space, many laid out on the deck because the bunks filled instantly.
40 casualties. What kinds of injuries?
A brutal mix. Severe burns from the gasoline fires and burns were incredibly hard to treat successfully in 1945. Survival rates were low. Lots of fragmentation injuries from the plane impacts and secondary explosions, shrapnel wounds all over. Broken bones, concussions.
How do you even begin to treat that many severe injuries with just 3 people?
Agonizing triage. Dr. Wen had to make battlefield decisions. Who could be saved? Who needed immediate attention to stop bleeding? Who had injuries like catastrophic burns that were likely fatal anyway, meaning resources were better spent on someone with a chance?
That's a terrible burden for a doctor.
Unimaginable. His main tools were pretty basic. Morphine syrettes to ease the incredible pain. Sulfa powder sprinkled onto wounds to try and stave off infection. Antibiotics like penicillin were still scarce, and saline solution drips to combat shock from blood loss and dehydration. He and his mates worked frantically, covered in blood, surrounded by the screams and moans of the wounded. It's a scene you just can't fathom.
While all this is happening, the steering fight, the fires, the sickbay horror, do they get any news about other ships? Specifically, their partnership?
Yes, and it's grim news. Around 18.47, just minutes after the Aaron Ward stabilized her steering, a report comes over the radio about the USS Little. The Little was the Aaron Ward's sister ship, same Sumner class, stationed right there with her on Radar Picket Station 10.
What happened to the Little?
The Little also took multiple kamikaze hits. The reports say 4 direct impacts, but she couldn't contain the damage. She sank.
Sank? How quickly?
Rapidly. She went down taking 30 of her crew with her.
So same place, same time, same type of ship, same number of hits, roughly. One sinks, one survives.
That's the stark reality. The USS Little, presumably following standard Navy anti-kamikaze doctrine, the stable gun platform approach absorbed 4 hits and was lost. The Aaron Ward, following Sanders' radical, insubordinate maneuvering tactics, also took 4 hits, suffered grievously but stayed afloat.
What was the final toll on the Aaron Ward then?
The cost to survival was still incredibly high. Final count: 42 men dead or missing, presumed dead. 71 wounded, many critically.
Out of a crew of how many?
A destroyer crew is around 336 men. So 42 dead, 71 wounded. That's 113 casualties. That's exactly 1/3 of the crew, 34% killed or injured in those 10 minutes of hell. She survived, but she paid a brutal price.
Okay, so the Aaron Ward survives, the little sinks. The Navy must have looked very closely at this afterwards, right? Trying to figure out why?
Oh, absolutely. In the months and years after the war, naval analysts pored over the action reports, the damage assessments, the survivor interviews. They compared the Aaron Ward's experience directly with ships like the Little and others that were lost on picket duty. They needed to understand what made the difference.
And did they conclude Sanders' crazy tactics were the key?
Overwhelmingly, yes. It boiled down to a combination of factors, all stemming from his core idea of high-speed, last-second evasion. It wasn't just one thing, it was how several elements worked together.
Let's break those down. You mentioned the physics earlier. The speed and the turn creating that visual shift for the pilot.
Right, that cognitive dissonance. The sheer speed 24 knots was crucial. It maximized the rate at which the ship could change its position. That 60 feet per second sideways swing of the stern during a hard turn, it happened faster than the inexperienced kamikaze pilot could mentally process and physically react to.
So exploiting their reaction time gap.
Exactly. That half-second or three-quarter-second delay between them seeing the turn and actually moving the controls meant their plane traveled another 180-plus feet on its original trajectory. By then, the ship wasn't there anymore, or at least the vital aiming point wasn't where they expected.
And this worked specifically because these weren't ace pilots.
That's a critical piece. These pilots, as we've said, had minimal training. They were taught point and shoot, essentially. Fly straight, aim, dive. They had no training, no instinct for tracking a target that was actively, violently maneuvering against them. When the target stopped being predictable, their training failed them.
Sanders turned their weakness into his advantage.
Precisely. And there's another psychological element, too, what the analysis called the commitment factor.
What's that?
Think about the kamikaze pilot's mindset. The ceremonies before takeoff, the final letters home, the immense cultural and military pressure. Once they started that final dive, there was enormous psychological resistance to aborting the attack. Even if the target started maneuvering wildly, even if the hit looked less certain, the imperative was to complete the mission.
So they'd press the attack even if the tactical situation fell apart.
Often, yes. Sanders seemed to understand this. By waiting until the absolute last second, 2 or 3 seconds before impact to make his most violent turn, he exploited this commitment. By the time the pilot realized the ship had jumped sideways, he was too low, too fast, and psychologically too committed to pull out or drastically change his approach. He just had to write it in, often resulting in a miss or a glancing blow.
Which brings us to the angle of the hits the Aaron Ward took. You said most were oblique.
Yes, that was maybe the most important factor in the ship's survival, even after being hit. Remember, the kamikaze's goal, especially with a 500-pound bomb, was a direct, perpendicular hit, 90 degrees to the hull or deck. That gives maximum penetration, lets the bomb get deep into the ship near machinery or magazines before exploding.
Like punching straight through armor?
Right. But on the Aaron Ward, because of the constant turning, 3 of the 4 aircraft impacts were glancing, oblique hits. 40 degrees, maybe less.
And why is that so much better for the ship?
Basic physics. Think about skipping a stone on water. A shallow angle lets it skip. A steep angle makes it plunge. Hitting thin destroyer plating, maybe only half an inch thick at a shallow angle, does 2 things. First, it dramatically increases the effective thickness the plane has to penetrate. That half-inch plate hit at 40 degrees acts more like it's over an inch thick.
Makes it harder to punch through.
Much harder. Second, and more importantly, the oblique angle tends to make the aircraft break apart on impact. The energy gets dissipated across the surface, the wings might shear off, the fuselage might crumple.
Like that engine that turned into a bowling ball.
Exactly. The engine separated because the rest of the plane disintegrated around it on that shallow angle impact. If it had been a direct 90-degree hit, the whole plane, engine and bomb included, might have punched deep inside before the bomb detonated, causing catastrophic internal damage. The oblique hits, while still deadly and causing fires, tended to keep the worst of the explosion outside the ship's vital core.
So the turns didn't just cause misses, they made the hits less effective.
Massively less effective. Deflection and disintegration versus deep penetration. That was often the difference between survival and sinking.
Did the constant high speed itself play any other role besides enabling the turns?
Possibly a psychological one. Conventional doctrines sometimes advise slowing down to improve gunnery stability. Sanders did the opposite, constant flank speed. A ship moving that fast, throwing up a huge wake, looks aggressive, looks dangerous. Some analysts speculated that this sheer visual impression of speed and violence might have caused some less determined kamikaze pilots to shy away and perhaps pick a slower, seemingly easier target nearby. Hard to prove, but plausible.
So the Navy studies all this. The physics, the pilot psychology, the damage patterns. What's the verdict on Captain Sanders' insubordination?
Vindication. Complete vindication. The evidence was undeniable. The comparison between Aaron Ward and ships like the Little was stark. The analysis showed that high-speed maneuvering at the last possible second significantly increased a ship's chances of survival against kamikaze attack.
So they changed the doctrine.
They did. By July 1945, just a couple of months after the Aaron Ward's ordeal, revised tactical doctrine went out to the fleet. It explicitly advised commanding officers to maintain maximum readiness for high speed and to execute radical changes of course and speed in the final moments of a kamikaze attack.
They basically took Sanders' crazy idea and made it official Navy policy.
Essentially, yes. What was once seen as bordering on insubordination became the recommended standard practice for survival. The Navy learned, adapted, albeit at a high cost.
And what happened to Captain Sanders? Did he get court-martialed or promoted?
He received the Navy Cross, one of the Navy's highest decorations for valor, specifically citing his aggressive and skillful ship handling and his brilliant evasive maneuvers that saved his ship under overwhelming attack. His gamble paid off, not just for the Aaron Ward, but for countless other sailors in the final months of the war who benefited from the lessons learned that day. #Jago's outro.
It's an incredible story of courage, innovation, and survival against the odds. But the ship itself, the USS Aaron Ward, what became of her after that horrific day?
She survived the battle, but she was grievously wounded. The damage from 4 kamikaze hits and the subsequent fires was just too extensive. The Navy determined she was damaged beyond economical repair.
So they didn't fix her up.
They patched her together enough to make her seaworthy. Amazingly, she actually limped back to the United States under her own power, a testament to her crew's damage control efforts.
Yeah.
But the cost of a full repair, given the war was winding down, was deemed too high. She was officially decommissioned and then scrapped in 1946.
A very short service life. Commissioned late 44, effectively knocked out May 45, just over 6 months in combat, really.
Rarely 14 months from commissioning to being laid up. But in that short time, especially in those 10 minutes on May 3rd, she proved a vital, revolutionary tactical point. Her survival changed things.
It really throws that contrast into sharp relief, doesn't it? The Aaron Ward, saved by unconventional thinking, lives, though scarred. The USS Little, following the rules, sinks.
It's a stark lesson in the reality of combat and command. Sometimes the established way, the book solution, is precisely the wrong thing to do when faced with a new, unexpected threat.
It speaks volumes about leadership, doesn't it? The willingness to analyze the situation, trust your own judgment even when it conflicts with authority, and then train your people relentlessly to execute that unconventional plan.
Absolutely. The sources really emphasize the weight of command in moments like that. Sanders had to make a decision based on his theory, his calculations, his belief, and that decision directly impacted the life or death of every single man on his ship.
You don't know if you're right until it's over.
Exactly. You make the call, you commit, and you live or die by the consequences. Sanders' rigorous, perhaps even obsessive training gave his controversial theory the chance to work when it mattered most. He gave his crew the tools, the reflexes, to survive the unsurvivable.
We've explored today how sometimes the decision that looks crazy, the one that breaks all the rules, is actually the path to survival. It makes you think, doesn't it? Which brings us to our final thought for you, our listener.
Where, in your own life, maybe professionally, maybe personally, are you sticking to the conventional wisdom? Are you perhaps operating like that stationary gun platform, following the established procedure because it's safe, because it's expected?
Is there a chance that the very predictability you rely on is making you a target? What unconventional approach, what calculated risk that feels like tactical heresy might actually be the key to navigating your own challenges and ensuring your own strategic survival? Something to think about.